Hello and welcome to In Conversation with WLV Doctoral College. I'm Dr Deborah Curate and I'm the Research Development Manager at the University of Wolverhampton.
And I'm Dr Ben Hannigan, I'm Director of the Doctoral College.
We decided we'd quite like to do a vlog around those first starting points of a doctorate, which is about writing an expression of interest applying for a doctorate. So Ben, there's lots of things that prospective doctoral students need to know about the process. So what's the first thing, what's the key first thing that somebody needs to do if they think they've got an idea that they could do a doctorate around?
Sometimes people say to me, I have an idea for a PhD. How do I go about writing it as a research proposal? Tell me where's the guidance I can refer to? And I always say to them, don't worry about the guidance, just write it as you see it. Get those ideas down on paper as you see them, and we'll look to the guidance later. So I think the first thing is getting your idea down on paper. If you've got that, then I think you've got the underlying concept. And in a way, the rest of it's kind of window dressing.
Okay.
But the guidance beyond that is often split into a number of sections, which are around expectations of what a university reviewing a research proposal for a PhD would quite like to see. They'd quite like to see a title. That title doesn't have to be the title that the PhD will end up with. And it may not even necessarily have to be a first stab at a title. It can be descriptive. A study of developments in, you know what I mean, or new approaches to something or other. You know, it doesn't have to be a snappy title. So they want a title.
Yep.
They want an engagement with the literature in the field. So they want really evidence that you're aware of other ideas, other bits of writing that are around your particular area. I mean, when you do that, you're going to miss stuff out. You're not going to be aware of all of it. That doesn't matter. It's just to show that there is already a basic understanding of work that's been done in the field.
Yeah.
They're going to want maybe some key reading. And I would split that into a primary reading list, which could just be 4 or 5 titles, and a secondary reading list that could be 10 or 12 or 15. So that this would be the underlying body of work that you'd be engaging with. If there's a lack of publications in the particular area you're talking about, that raises also some interesting possibilities. Why has nobody else talked about this? It creates an area that you can step into and generate new knowledge. And I think as well, the other thing they're going to probably want is something about how this research idea arises from your particular experiences. And they could be academic experiences or they could be life experiences. So sometimes when somebody finishes a master's with a big thesis, that will raise questions about the disciplinary field. It will show that there's an area that's not being explored. Often this is a frustration for the potential PhD applicant that nobody has done what they think really needs to be done, what is very obviously in need of being doing. So you could say, that this PhD idea arises from my master's work into this particular area. Or it could be that you're talking about life experiences and that people who come from industry or working in the non-academic sector will have encountered a certain issue that they think can be resolved through further research. I mean, examples could be someone who comes from industry around supply chains not being particularly efficient in certain geographical regions. They're aware of that, they're aware of the issues that can feed into a particular research proposal as well. So a bit of a kind of where you're coming from. And as part of that, maybe how your qualifications fold into this as well, so that your first degree or your master's really speak to these areas, so you're already kind of qualified to be taking this on. My final point really is that when you review a research proposal, you're looking for 2 things. One is a proposal that strikes you as doable and possible and good.
Yeah.
So the subject that the proposal concerns itself with is important. But also the proposal needs to evidence the proposer's ability to do it. or put that in a more straightforward way, it needs to reassure
Yeah.
the assessors that this is not going to be some car crash, 6 months, everything's fallen out of the window, the building's on fire, we can never collect this data to begin with, the applicant doesn't know what he or she is doing. But this is something that really shows that somebody can do the project that they're proposing. There's, I think, for universities, an ethical dimension to this.
Yeah.
You can't let people in who have a proposal that may not work. It would waste their time and their money, and it mustn't happen.
So you're saying that there's three sort of main questions that people need to answer. What is it that you want to know? Why is it you want to know it? And how are you going to do it? Those just to be clear, they're not my questions. So they're questions that Vernon Trafford and Shashi Lesham set in a book called Stepping Stones to Your Doctorate.
Mm-hmm.
And when they talk about trying to find your direction as a researcher, what you're going to do, those are the three main questions that you should be asking yourself when you start to propose your research.
It boils that down very nicely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it can be, I've looked at proposals that answer two of those, but not all three of those questions. If they can answer all three, then I guess you're in business.
Yep.
Often we're not talking about a massively long document.
No.
I mean, a couple of thousand words. I mean, most universities will have, if they want other mechanisms, that they may interview you or just call you in for a chat or even speak on the phone or have a tour of the campus. So there can be some sort of informal discussion. They can ask you to further develop the proposal if they think it's useful to do that. They can ask for a sample of writing. It's quite normal. You could just send a master's thesis or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, one of the dilemmas of the proposal is that you're asking for a fairly detailed overview of something that the student, the applicant, hasn't yet done.
Yeah.
And that's quite difficult. I mean, it's like saying to somebody who's about to go on holiday, so what are you going to do on holiday?
Yeah.
And you don't really know. Like, you know that you may go to this place or that place, and here's the deadlines and the travel details. But you're really not sure. And if somebody said, well, I'm going to fly here, I'm going to eat in this restaurant, then go to this hotel, then go to this beach, that would seem really odd. But that's kind of what we're asking the proposer to do. So, to my mind, the solution to this is a language solution, which is to say, at this point, having collected this data, it may be possible to further investigate this, or if this data shows that, then it opens up the possibility of a further field of analysis. Or to say, at this early stage, I propose looking at these 3 case studies. So if the assessors think, well, 3, there should be 4, or here are 3, but 1 doesn't make any sense, those conversations happen later down the line. They don't need to happen. Perfection isn't an aim.
Yeah.
So we're asking for confidence and detail about something that doesn't yet exist, and that can be quite hard to do.
Okay. So there are 2 possible outcomes to this. You submit this, and the process is that if it's accepted, you may well be then aligned to a supervisory team who will then work with you to develop a research proposal. But there are lots of different reasons why a proposal might be rejected, and that's not always that the proposal isn't strong enough or it isn't well written, but sometimes it doesn't align to the specialisms of the department that you're applying for. So if you're applying to a history department that's full of specialists in medieval history, but you want to study Victorian history, it may well be that they don't have the supervisory capacity to take that project on. And so there may be a conversation about, well, that's really interesting, but if you thought about doing this, and you may say yes or you may say no, but they may then recommend that perhaps you take that to Liverpool University because they've got specialists in that area or wherever.
Yeah, which is a nice thing to do, to say thank you, not for us, but have you thought about these universities? But I mean, I think in terms of thinking where you apply, you might want to look at the website, find out
Yeah.
what other students are researching, and think, does your stuff align with
Yeah.
what they're doing? I mean, also there can be just pragmatic reasons why they decline a proposal. I mean, it can be around resources that
Yeah.
you need. Particular bits of kit, telescopes, licenses for experimentation that a certain institution
Yeah.
wouldn't have because they're not in that particular area. Or it can be around, access to high levels of specialism, which the university has, but they've already filled them up with PhD researchers. I mean, every university's in this situation. So, yeah, there can be a number of reasons why they can be reluctant to take a proposal.
Because supervisors are only allowed to supervise so many students,
Yeah.
aren't they? And if we take on more than that, there are then quality issues with the support that we can provide to the students. So it's actually in your best interests if they don't take you and just squeeze you in.
Yeah, I think so. And I think at the upper end of it, you have name academics who will have, I don't know, the 6 PhD students they can manage.
6.
Or 6 or 8, or who knows how many.
I've got 50.
You've got 50. So you have but you have like a limit, let's say,
Yeah.
and you really can't take any
Yeah.
more. So you'll have to wait for 1 or 2 of them to complete before
Yeah.
ushering in a new
Yeah.
student. But then at the other end of it, I think more interestingly, you have a lot of early career researchers who might have 1 PhD student and would love to get
Yeah.
another 1 or 2, and would be very hands-on and give you a lot of their time and develop you and
Yeah.
all these kind of things. And if you were at some ancient university with some ancient professor who's dealing with hundreds of students, that person may not give you the time that you would get from an early career researcher.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I really think often it's smarter to go for a young, hungry team than
Yeah.
a big name. So.
So check out the department that you're applying to, make sure that your research aligns to it, make sure you answer all 3 of the questions. What is it that you want to do? Why is it that you're doing it? How you are going to do it? Make sure there's an indicative reading list there, so it shows that you're reading extensively around the subject area and not just basing your proposition on 1 or 2 books or papers. And
Key research questions that you
Yeah.
will seek to answer, position your research within the wider field, and as I said, to reassure
yeah,
the people looking at this proposal that this can be done.
yes,
So even to the extent of a timeline, and which you can cut into 6-month blocks. You know,
Yeah.
the first 6 months will be this, the second 6-month experimentation, the third 6-month I will write up. You know, that kind of thing.
so provide the information that gives people confidence in the research.
And know that, especially with our institution, we actually have a discussion, we have a feedback loop, we're happy to develop, things like that. So it's
Yeah.
not a yes, no, you can come on this day or go away. It's actually a conversation and a process. And that can, take a little bit of time. I mean, it can take us, to move to a conditional offer, it can take us, 3 or 4 weeks, I think, if all the documents are in on time. So I think especially for international applicants that may
Yeah.
be up against other deadlines around funding availability and visas, if they're very keen to start on the 1st of December, please don't apply in the middle of November and think that all that can be sorted out. We do need a bit of a run-up.
But it's worthwhile mentioning that we actually have a pre-research degree
Mm.
here. So if you make an application and your idea is really good, but that application needs a little bit more work, we can make you an offer of a pre-research degree where you would work with your supervisors for 6 months to develop that concept and develop your skills with us. So that's open to both international and home students.
Absolutely.
yeah,
Very
yeah.
developmental.
Yeah, so there's lots of different avenues to a PhD at Wolverhampton.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you for listening and please do apply.
Thank you. Bye.